I always knew Maureen viewed our family as a stage play she directed, but I never expected the performance to end with her hand across my 8-year-old son's face. The silence in that dining room was heavier than the crystal chandelier above us. She thought her money made her untouchable, but she forgot we live in a digital world. All it took to collapse her carefully curated legacy were 6 calm words. Please repeat that. Everyone is recording. The tires of our SUV crunched over the gravel of the driveway, a sound that always triggered a physical response in my body. It was a tightening in my chest, a sudden awareness of my own heartbeat, and a coldness in my fingertips. We were entering Maple Hollow, Pennsylvania, a town that felt less like a community and more like a carefully painted backdrop for people who cared deeply about appearances. My husband, Eric, gripped the steering wheel with hands that were white at the knuckles. He stared straight ahead at the sprawling brick colonial house that loomed at the end of the long drive. We had made a pact before we left our own driveway in the city. We had agreed that this Thanksgiving would be different. We called it the Fresh Start strategy. We would be polite, we would be present, and we would leave before the pumpkin pie had time to settle. Most importantly, we had a firm boundary. Keep it peaceful for Liam. Our son was 8 years old, sensitive, and observant. He did not need to see his mother shrinking under the weight of his grandmother's disapproval, and he certainly did not need to see his father retreating into the silence of a frightened child. I looked in the rearview mirror. Liam was absorbed in his tablet, wearing the noise-canceling headphones he loved. He looked small in the back seat, his hair slightly messy in the way I adored, but my mother-in-law loathed. "You okay?" Eric asked, his voice tight. I forced a smile that I hoped looked reassuring. "I am fine. We are just here for dinner. We eat, we smile, we leave. Remember the plan?" Eric nodded, but his jaw muscle jumped. He was 35 years old, a successful architect, and a wonderful father. Yet the moment we crossed the county line into Maple Hollow, he seemed to shed 15 years of confidence. He became the boy who had to earn his place at the table. Maureen Halstead, my mother-in-law, did not live in a home. She lived in an estate. The house was grand, intimidating, and devoid of warmth. As we parked, I noticed the driveway was already full. My stomach knotted tighter. This was supposed to be a small family gathering. Maureen had promised it would just be us, Eric's sister Tessa, and their parents. But as I stepped out of the car, I saw 3 luxury sedans I did not recognize. "This is not a small dinner," I whispered to Eric as I unbuckled Liam. He looked at the cars, recognizing them instantly. "That is the Bentleys from church, and that one belongs to the Wynns." I stiffened. The Wynns were old money, the kind of family Maureen constantly referenced as the benchmark for how life should be lived. We walked up the front steps, Eric holding Liam's hand. I smoothed the front of my dress, a simple navy sheath that I knew Maureen would find either too plain or too cheap. The door swung open before we could knock. Maureen stood there, framed by the warm light of the foyer. She looked impeccable, as always. Her silver hair was coiffed into a rigid helmet of perfection, and she wore a cashmere sweater set that probably cost more than my first car. "Happy Thanksgiving!" she cried out, her voice pitching up in a way that signaled an audience. She pulled Eric into a hug that lasted 3 seconds too long, then bent down to inspect Liam. "Look at you," she said, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "You have grown. We will have to do something about that hair before we take photos." She straightened up and finally looked at me. Her gaze swept from my boots to my neckline in a single, dismissive second. "Stella," she said, "you made it. I was worried you might get lost. I know the roads out here can be confusing for city drivers. We have driven here for 7 years. Maureen," I said, keeping my tone light, "it is good to see you. Come in. Come in." She ushered us inside. We have a full house. Everyone is dying to see Eric. The foyer was crowded. I recognized the Bentleys, a couple in their 60s who nodded at me with polite indifference. But there were others. Standing near the grand staircase was a woman with a professional camera setup, adjusting a lighting ring, And next to her was a young woman I recognized from Eric's high school yearbooks, though she had changed significantly since then. Kara Wynn. She was stunning, polished to a high shine, wearing a dress that was festive but tailored to show off a Pilates-toned figure. She held a glass of white wine and looked at Eric with a familiarity that made the hair on my arms stand up. "Eric!" Kara exclaimed, gliding over. "It has been forever. Maureen told me you were coming, and I just had to stop by." Eric looked surprised, but managed a polite smile. "Hi, Kara. Good to see you." Kara turned to me. Her eyes were bright, assessing, "And this must be Stella. Maureen has told me so much about you." I shook her hand. Her grip was firm, her skin cool. "Nice to meet you, Kara." Maureen clapped her hands together. "Kara is practically family. I call her my adopted niece. She's been helping me so much lately with the new foundation, but more on that later. Come, let me take your coats." As we moved into the living room, I realized exactly what this was. This was not a dinner. It was a performance. Maureen had curated an audience to witness her benevolence and her control. The woman with the camera turned out to be a local lifestyle blogger Maureen had hired to document the day. I felt a sudden, fierce need to protect Liam from this circus. He was looking around the room with wide, uncertain eyes. The noise was already rising, the clinking of glasses and the performative laughter of people trying to impress one another. I leaned down to Liam. "Hey, buddy. Remember the plan? We are going to set up a base camp. I found Eric's sister, Tessa, near the kitchen. Tessa was the only person in this house I trusted. She looked as exhausted as I felt, balancing a tray of intricate appetizers. Tessa," I said quietly, "it is a zoo out there." She rolled her eyes. "Tell me about it. Mother is on a rampage. Everything has to be perfect for the video." "I need a favor," I said. "I'm going to set up a kid zone in the den. Just for Liam and your two. I brought crafts and a movie. Can we rotate check-ins? I just want them to have a place to breathe." Tessa looked relieved. "Oh, thank God. Yes, my kids are already hiding under the dining table. I will send them in." I spent the next 20 minutes creating a sanctuary. The den was down the hall, away from the main noise. I moved the coffee table, set up the art supplies I had packed, and queued up a movie on the television. When Liam and his cousins, two rowdy but sweet boys, settled in with markers and paper, I felt a small victory. They were safe. They were contained. I stood in the doorway for a moment, watching Liam laugh at something his cousin said. He was happy. That was all that mattered. When I returned to the living room, the atmosphere had shifted, the appetizers were being circulated, and the guests had formed small circles of conversation. Maureen held court in the center, flanked by Kara and the blogger, Stella. Maureen called out, beckoning me over with a wave of her hand. "Come join us. We were just talking about standards." I walked over, taking a spot next to Eric, who was holding a drink he had not taken a sip of. Kara was just telling us about her work in interior design. Maureen said, "She has such an eye. It really takes a certain upbringing to understand the difference between quality and, well, trends." Kara smiled modestly. "Oh, Maureen, you are too kind. I just think a home should reflect the family's legacy." "Precisely." Maureen said, "That is what I always tell Eric. You have to honor where you come from." Stella, "How are things at the dental office? Still managing the schedule?" I felt the eyes of the group on me. I was proud of my job. I managed a busy, high-end dental practice. I handled complex billing, staff management, and patient care. But in Maureen's mouth, it sounded like I was answering phones for minimum wage. "Things are going well. Thank you," I said evenly. "We just expanded to a second location." Maureen smiled. A tight little expression. "That is cute." "It is good for you to have something to keep you busy." Eric shifted beside me. I saw his hand tighten around his glass. "Actually," Eric said, his voice a little too loud, "Stella runs the entire operation. The owner says the place would fall apart without her." Maureen laughed, a tinkling sound that grated on my nerves. "Oh, Eric, you are always so loyal. It is sweet. But let us be honest, managing a calendar is hardly running an empire." She turned back to the blogger. Our family has standards. You see, we believe in excellence. That is why I am so excited about the announcement Kara is going to make. I looked at Eric. He was staring at the floor, his jaw working. He was trying to keep the peace. I knew the internal battle he was fighting. If he spoke up, he risked a scene that Maureen would weaponize later. If he stayed silent, he let her disrespect his wife. I leaned in close to him, my voice a whisper only he could hear. I can handle the digs about my job. I said, but if she goes after Liam, you have to step in, immediately. I am not asking. Eric looked at me. His eyes were miserable. I promise. He whispered back. Just then, Kara clapped her hands for attention. The room quieted down. The blogger raised her camera, the red recording light blinking. Hi everyone, Kara said, beaming. I wanted to share a little surprise. Maureen and I have been working on something special for the last few months. We are launching a new charitable foundation called the Halstead Win Initiative. It is dedicated to promoting traditional family values in our community. There was a round of polite applause. Maureen looked radiant, basking in the attention. We are collecting videos and testimonials today. Kara continued, gesturing with her phone. We want to capture the essence of a real, strong family. So if I come around with my camera, just be natural. Tell us what family means to you. I felt a cold prickle of unease. This was not just a dinner. It was content. We were props in Maureen's branding exercise. I excused myself to check on the kids, needing to escape the suffocating air of the living room. As I walked down the hallway, I heard voices coming from the library. The door was ajar. It was Maureen. She was speaking to one of the church friends, a man I recognized as a lawyer. We have to keep the bloodline close, Maureen was saying. Her voice was low but distinct. I am not going to let everything my husband built get diluted. We need to protect the Halstead legacy. I stopped. The word diluted hit me like a physical slap. I knew exactly what she meant. She meant Liam, who she saw as half-outsider. And the paperwork? The man asked. Eric signed the initial forms years ago. Maureen said, he trusts me. He does not read the fine print. He thinks it is just tax structuring. But once the foundation is active, the control shifts. My heart hammered against my ribs. I remembered the papers. 3 years ago, Eric had brought home a stack of documents Maureen had sent. She had told him it was standard estate maintenance, something to minimize taxes for everyone. Eric had signed them at the kitchen counter while eating cereal, barely glancing at the pages. I backed away silently, my mind racing. She was planning something financial. She was moving assets, or rights, or authority, and she was using Eric's trust to do it. I returned to the living room. My senses heightened. I saw everything differently now. The guests were witnesses. Kara was an accomplice, and Eric was the mark. Maureen spotted me. Oh, good. You are back. We need a photo. Everyone, into the foyer. It was a command, not a request. The guests shuffled toward the grand staircase. Maureen began directing people like a drill sergeant. Raymond, you stand there. Tessa, put the boys on the bottom step. Eric, darling, you come right here in the center. She placed Eric in the middle of the group, directly under the chandelier. Then she grabbed Kara's arm and pulled her next to him. Kara, you stand right beside Eric. You two look so good together. It balances the height. I stood to the side, waiting for instructions. Maureen looked at me, then pointed to a spot on the far left, behind Tessa's husband. Stella, you can squeeze in back there. Just try not to block the light. The insult was physical. She was positioning Kara as the wife, and me as the distant relative. The room went quiet. Even the guests seemed to sense the awkwardness. I did not move to the back. I walked calmly over to Eric. I slipped my arm through his and smiled at Kara. Actually, I think I will stand with my husband. I said. My voice was pleasant, cheerful even, but I held my ground. Kara looked at Maureen, unsure. Maureen's smile faltered for a fraction of a second, her eyes flashing with irritation. Well, if you insist, Maureen said crisply. But we are losing the symmetry. Everyone, smile. The camera flashed. I felt the room cool. I had disrupted her tableau. I had refused to be a prop. As the group broke up, I pulled my phone from my pocket. I needed a lifeline. I texted Joni, my best friend who knew every detail of the Halstead madness. One sentence. If this gets weird, call me. The reply came 3 seconds later. Already on standby. Just say the word. Dinner was announced. We moved toward the dining room, where the table was set with elaborate china and crystal. It looked beautiful, but it felt like a minefield. I went to the den to get Liam. He was sitting on the floor, coloring his turkey, but he wasn't smiling anymore. He looked pale, withdrawn. "Hey," I said, kneeling down. "Hungry? It is turkey time." Liam looked up at me. His eyes were swimming with tears he was trying to hold back. "Mom?" he whispered. "Yeah, baby? What is it?" He swallowed hard. "Grandma came in while you were in the bathroom. She told me I have to be perfect at dinner." I froze. "She came in here?" Liam nodded. "She said if I am not a good boy, I will embarrass Dad. She said Dad is important and I cannot mess this up for him." Rage, hot and sudden, flared in my chest. It wasn't the insults to me. I could handle those. I could handle the bad photo placement and the snide comments about my job. But telling an 8-year-old boy that his existence was a potential source of shame for his father? That was a violation. It was emotional manipulation. It was subtle enough that she could deny it, claiming she just wanted him to behave, but it was designed to make him anxious. It was designed to make him perform. I took a deep breath, pushing the anger down into a cold, hard place in my stomach. I would not let her see me lose control. That was what she wanted. She wanted the crazy daughter-in-law. I cupped Liam's face in my hands. "Listen to me. Liam, you could never embarrass Dad. Dad loves you exactly how you are. You do not have to be perfect. You just have to be Liam, okay?" He nodded, sniffing. "Okay, we are going to go eat, and you are going to sit right next to me. If you want to leave the table at any time, you just squeeze my hand. Got it?" "Got it." I stood up, holding his hand tightly. I was not just walking into dinner anymore. I was walking into a battle. I checked my phone one last time, ensuring the battery was full. As we walked back toward the dining room, I saw Eric standing by the door, waiting for us. He looked hopeful, desperate for the evening to go smoothly. He had no idea what his mother had just whispered to his son. I looked at Maureen, who was seating guests at the head of the table, laughing at something Kara said. She looked triumphant. She thought she had already won. She thought she had successfully cowed the child and sidelined the wife. She had no idea that she had just primed me. I was no longer just enduring the holiday. I was waiting. And I knew, with a mother's instinct, that the line was about to be crossed. We took our seats. The air smelled of roasted turkey and expensive perfume. The cameras were rolling. The stage was set. I sat down, unfolded my napkin, and watched my mother-in-law. Your move, Maureen. The first course was served. The dining room table was a vast expanse of mahogany, polished to a mirror shine that reflected the flickering candlelight. It was set for 12, with heavy silverware that felt cold to the touch, and crystal glasses that chimed softly whenever someone bumped the table. I sat next to Liam, my body angled slightly toward him, creating a physical shield between him and the rest of the room. Eric sat across from us, next to Kara. Maureen took the head of the table, sitting on a high-backed chair that looked suspiciously like a throne. We began with a prayer, in most families. This is a moment of shared quiet and genuine thanks. At the Halstead table, it was the opening monologue of the evening's performance. Maureen clasped her hands together, bowing her head just enough to look pious, but keeping her eyes open enough to scan the room. "Lord," she began, her voice projecting to the back of the room where the blogger stood near the buffet. "We thank you for this bounty. We thank you for the blessings of wealth and health that you have bestowed upon this family, a reward for our diligence and our adherence to your laws." She paused, letting the silence stretch. I saw Liam reach for his water glass, his hand trembling slightly. I placed my hand over his, stilling it. We pray for guidance, Maureen continued, her tone hardening. We pray for the strength to uphold our traditions in a world that seeks to tear them down. And Lord, we especially thank you for the gift of obedience. We thank you for children who listen to their elders and for women who know their place in the home, supporting the legacy rather than challenging it. She looked up then. Her gaze did not wander. It locked directly onto mine. Her eyes were hard, flat stones. Amen, she said. Amen. The guests murmured in unison. There was a light ripple of chuckles from the end of the table where the Bentleys sat. It was the polite, uncomfortable laughter of people who knew an insult had been delivered, but were too well bred to acknowledge it. I kept my expression neutral, a mask of calm I had spent 7 years perfecting. I picked up my napkin and unfolded it across my lap, refusing to give her the satisfaction of a flinch. Eric stared at his plate. He picked up his fork and set it down again. A nervous tick I knew meant he was spiraling. He had heard it. He knew exactly who that prayer was for. But he said nothing. Kara, sensing the tension or perhaps just eager to get her content, stood up. She held her phone out, the ring light attached to the case casting a supernatural glow on her face. That was beautiful. Maureen, Kara said, I think we should keep that energy going, since we are all here, and I'm recording for the Foundation's launch video. Why do we not go around the table? Everyone can share what they are grateful for. It will be a lovely testament to family unity. She panned the phone toward Maureen. You first, Maureen. Maureen bloomed under the attention. She straightened her posture, angling her face to catch the most flattering light. I am grateful for my son. Eric, she said, her voice trembling with manufactured emotion. She reached across the table, not to touch Eric, but to gesture at him as if he were an exhibit. He is a man of integrity, she continued. He is a Halstead through and through. I am so proud that he never forgets where he came from, no matter how far he strays geographically. He knows that his roots are here, in this house, with the people who truly understand him. Eric managed a weak smile. Thanks, Mom. And, Maureen added, turning her smile toward the woman standing next to him, I am grateful for Kara. It is rare these days to find a young woman who understands family duty. She is the daughter I always wanted. She has grace, she has style, and she understands that appearances matter because they reflect the state of the soul. The implication hung in the air like smoke. I was the daughter she had, but Kara was the daughter she wanted. I took a sip of water, the ice cold against my teeth. I could feel the trap closing. This entire dinner was designed to edit me out of the narrative while I was sitting right there. Kara beamed. Oh, stop. You are going to make me cry. Okay, let us keep going. Liam? What about you? Buddy? What are you grateful for? She pointed the camera at my son. Liam froze. He was 8 years old, with a mouthful of bread roll and a shy nature that did not lend itself to public speaking. He looked at the lens, then at me. I nodded encouragingly. Just tell them about your project. Sweetie, the one you made at school? Liam swallowed the bread and sat up. I am grateful for my turkey, he said, his voice small. Your turkey? Kara asked, stepping closer. You mean the one we are eating? No, Liam said, gaining a little confidence. The paper one. I made it in art class. It is huge. I traced everyone's hands, Mom's and Dad's and mine, and I used the orange glitter glue for the feathers because that is my favorite color. It is on the fridge at home. He smiled, a genuine, toothy grin that usually melted hearts. Maureen cut in. Her voice was light, conversational, but it carried the edge of a razor. Oh, I saw a picture of that. She said, it was quite a mess, wasn't it? Glitter everywhere. We do not do sloppy at the Halsteads. Liam. We believe in coloring inside the lines. Art is about discipline, not just making a mess with glue. Liam's face fell. The light in his eyes extinguished instantly. He shrank back into his chair, his shoulders hunching up toward his ears. He looked at his hands, suddenly ashamed of the creativity he had been so proud of an hour ago. The cruelty of it took my breath away. It was so petty, so unnecessary. She was crushing a child's joy simply because she could. I felt the heat rise in my neck, but I forced my voice to remain steady. I turned to Liam, ignoring the camera that was still pointed at us. I think it is a masterpiece. Liam, I said clearly, the colors were bold and creative. In fact, after dinner, I want you to tell Aunt Tessa exactly how you mixed that orange paint. She loves art, and she would love to hear about your technique. I looked at Tessa across the table. She nodded vigorously, her eyes wide with sympathy. I would love that. Liam, Tessa said, you have to teach me. Liam looked up, a flicker of relief crossing his face. Okay. Maureen's eyes narrowed. She did not like being redirected. She did not like losing the center of gravity. She picked up her wine glass, took a slow sip, and set it down with a sharp click. Well, she said, let us hope his table manners are better than his art skills. The first course was cleared, and the main meal was served. A server, hired for the evening, placed a plate of turkey, stuffing, and roasted vegetables in front of Liam. The smell was delicious, but my appetite was gone. I was in a state of hypervigilance, watching Maureen's hands, watching her eyes. Maureen did not eat. She watched Liam. Liam picked up his fork. He held it in his fist, digging into the mashed potatoes. It was how most 8-year-olds ate when they were hungry and relaxed. Liam, Maureen barked. Liam jumped, dropping a dollop of potatoes onto his placemat. Hold your fork properly, Maureen commanded. Like a gentleman, not like a caveman. Liam fumbled to adjust his grip. I am sorry. Grandma. And sit up straight, she added. You are slouching. It restricts the digestion, and it looks lazy. Shoulders back, chin up. Liam straightened his spine, looking stiff and uncomfortable. He took a small bite of turkey, chewing carefully. Do not chew like a cow. Maureen snapped, mouth closed. Honestly, Eric, do you not teach him anything at home? It is embarrassing to watch. Guests were staring now. The conversation around the table had died. The blogger lowered her camera slightly, sensing the tension, but she did not stop recording. Kara looked uncomfortable, shifting her weight from one foot to the other. Maureen. I said quietly, he is eating. Let him enjoy his meal. Maureen turned that bright, terrifying smile on me. I am simply helping him. Stella, don't be dramatic. We are teaching him refinement. If he wants to carry the Halstead name, he needs to know how to act at a table. We have standards. She turned back to Liam, who was now trembling. He put his fork down. Pick it up, Maureen said. We are not finished. And stop fidgeting. You are vibrating the table. It is incredibly rude. Liam's lower lip began to quiver. A single tear escaped his eye and tracked through the dusting of freckles on his cheek. He looked at Eric. He was begging his father to make it stop. I looked at Eric too. His face was pale, his eyes fixed on his wineglass. He was gripping the stem so hard I thought it would shatter. Eric, I said, my voice low and urgent. Eric shifted in his chair. Mom, he said, his voice cracking slightly. Maybe lay off a bit. He is just a kid. Maureen laughed. It was a harsh, dismissive sound. Oh, stop coddling him. Eric, this is why he is so soft. He needs to toughen up. Look at him. Crying over a little correction. It is pathetic. Liam let out a small sob. He wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. Use your napkin, Maureen all but shouted. I had enough. I pushed my chair back, the legs scraping loudly against the hardwood floor. That is it, I said. We are done. Maureen's eyes flashed with fury. She stood up, leaning over the table. She was not used to being defied in her own dining room. Sit down, Stella, she hissed. I reached for Liam's hand. Come on, Liam, we are going to the den. No, Maureen shouted. She moved faster than I expected. She rounded the corner of the table in 3 quick strides. She was in a frenzy, a sudden snap of control that had been fraying all evening. He is not leaving until he learns respect, she yelled. She reached out. It was an impulse, a loss of inhibition fueled by the wine and the adrenaline of the performance. She meant to grab his shoulder, perhaps to shake him, to force him to look at her, but her hand was moving too fast, and her coordination was off. Her open palm connected hard with the side of Liam's face. It wasn't a playful tap, it was a slap. A sharp, stinging impact that echoed in the silent room. The sound was sickening. It was the sound of skin on skin, loud and unmistakable. The room froze. Time seemed to suspend. The server stopped with a pitcher of water mid-pour. The Bentleys gasped. Kara's hand flew to her mouth. Liam recoiled, his hand flying to his cheek. He didn't cry out immediately. He just looked at her, his eyes wide, filled with a shock so profound it broke my heart. He was stunned. He couldn't process that his grandmother, the woman who gave him Christmas presents, had just struck him. Maureen stood there, her hands still raised slightly. Her chest was heaving. For a split second, she looked satisfied, as if she had finally exerted the dominance she craved. Then, the reality of what she had done seemed to filter in. I did not scream. I did not lunge at her. The anger that had been burning inside me all night suddenly vanished, replaced by a clarity that was cold, crystalline, and absolute. I stood up slowly to my full height. I moved between Maureen and my son. I placed a steady hand on Liam's uninjured shoulder, grounding him, letting him know I was there. I looked directly at Maureen. I looked at the panic starting to form in her eyes. I looked past her to the blogger, whose camera was still raised, the red light still blinking steady and true. I looked at Kara, whose phone was still held aloft. I spoke in a voice that was not loud, but it carried to every corner of the room. It was the voice of a woman who was done negotiating. Please repeat that. Everyone is recording. The words hung in the air, heavy and undeniable. Maureen's eyes flicked to the blogger. She saw the lens. She saw Kara's phone. She saw the phones of the guests sitting on the table. The color drained from her face. It was instantaneous. She went from flushed with rage to a sickly, ash-gray pallor. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. She realized, in that fraction of a second, that the narrative she had spent months constructing, the benevolent matriarch, the pillar of the community, the defender of values, had just been incinerated, and she had lit the match herself. A guest coughed, a dry, nervous sound in the heavy silence. Oh my God. Someone murmured from the other end of the table. Kara lowered her phone slowly, her face pale. She looked at Maureen with a mixture of horror and self-preservation. She knew, just as I did, that you could not edit this out, not when there were witnesses. Maureen tried to smile. It was a grotesque thing, a twitch of facial muscles that refused to cooperate. I didn't, she stammered. I was just snapping him out of it. I did not respond to her. She did not deserve a response. She was no longer a person I needed to speak to. She was a liability I was removing from my life. I turned to Tessa, who was standing now, looking horrified. Tessa, I said calmly. Help me get him to the den. Tessa moved instantly. She came around the table, her face set. I gathered Liam close to my side. He was trembling violently now, the shock wearing off, the tears coming. I steered him away from the table, turning my back on Maureen completely. You are safe, I whispered into Liam's hair as we walked. You did nothing wrong. This is not your fault. We walked out of the dining room. The sound of our footsteps the only noise in the house. I could feel the eyes of the guests on our backs. I could feel the ruin we were leaving behind. We entered the den. It was quiet, the movie still playing on the television. I sat Liam down on the sofa. I checked his cheek. It was red, a distinct handprint blooming on his pale skin. I pulled him into a hug, holding him tight. I am so sorry. Baby, I am so sorry. Tessa knelt beside us. Is he okay? Do you need ice? Stay with him, I said. I looked at Tessa, locking eyes with her. Do not let anyone in this room. Not Maureen. Not Kara. No one. Put the movie on loud. Get him some juice. Just keep him safe. I will, Tessa said. I promise. She sat next to Liam and put her arm around him. I stood up. I smoothed my dress. My hands were shaking, but only slightly. I took a deep breath, inhaling the scent of the old books in the den. Grounding myself. I had one more thing to do. I walked back out into the hallway. I did not run. I walked with the measured pace of an executioner. I returned to the dining room entrance. The scene was chaotic. Maureen was sitting in her chair, weeping into her napkin, playing the victim. Kara was whispering furiously to the blogger. The guests were standing, uncertain whether to leave or stay. Eric was still sitting at the table. He was staring at his empty plate, his body rigid. I stood in the doorway. I did not shout. I did not need to. "Eric," I said. He looked up. His eyes were haunted, filled with a mixture of shame and terror. "Kitchen, now." I turned and walked away. I did not wait to see if he followed. I knew he would. The dynamic had shifted. Maureen was no longer the loudest voice in the room. The silence I had created was deafening, and in that silence, her power was evaporating like water on a hot skillet. I walked into the kitchen, the bright fluorescent lights humming overhead. It was sterile, clean, and empty. I leaned against the granite island, crossed my arms over my chest, and waited for my husband to decide if he was a father or a son. The kitchen was a stark contrast to the dining room. Where the dining room was warm wood and candlelight, the kitchen was stainless steel, white marble, and aggressive, surgical brightness. It was a catering kitchen, designed for staff, not for families. The air hummed with the sound of the sub-zero refrigerator and the distant, muffled murmur of the guests we had left behind. I leaned against the island, my hands gripping the cold stone edge to keep them from trembling. I was not afraid. I was vibrating with a surplus of adrenaline that had nowhere to go. The swinging door pushed open, and Eric walked in. He looked 10 years older than he had when we arrived. His shoulders were slumped, his tie was loosened as if he had been struggling to breathe, and his face was a mask of misery. He stopped a few feet away from me, unable to close the distance. He looked at me, then at the floor, then at the ceiling, anywhere but my eyes. I did not wait for him to speak. I did not have the patience for his rationalizations, and I certainly did not have the energy to manage his feelings. I am going to make this very simple for you. "Eric," I said. My voice shook slightly, a tremor I could not suppress, but the tone was iron. He looked at me then, flinching at the sound of his name. "I am taking Liam." I said, "We are leaving. We are walking out the front door, getting in the car, and driving home. We are not staying for dessert. We are not saying goodbye. We are done." Eric opened his mouth, but I held up a hand. "You have a choice to make." I continued. "You can get in the car with us, or you can stay here and finish your dinner. I will not stop you from staying. But I need you to understand that if you stay, you are making a statement that I will never forget." Eric rubbed his face with both hands, a gesture of exhaustion that dragged the skin down, making his eyes look hollow. "Stella, please," he whispered. "You know she did not mean to hurt him. She gets like this." I stared at him, incredulous. "She hit him. Eric, she hit our son across the face because he did not hold a fork the way she wanted. Do not tell me what she meant. I saw what she did. It is not that simple," Eric said, his voice rising with a desperate, pleading edge. "You do not understand how she is. She snaps. She has always been like this. It is how she corrects people." I pushed off the island, stepping into his space. "Correction?" I asked, my voice low. "Is that what you call it?" Eric looked away, his jaw working. I could see the battle happening behind his eyes. The war between the man he was with me and the terrified boy he became in this house. "She used to do it to me," he said. The admission came out in a rush. A quiet confession dropped onto the tile floor. I stopped. The anger in my chest paused, replaced by a sudden, sharp pity. "What?" I asked. "When I was a kid," Eric said, staring at a spot on the cabinet. "If I spoke out of turn, if I spilled something, if I laughed too loud when her friends were over, she would do exactly that. Quick, sharp, right across the face, And if I cried, she would tell me I was embarrassing the family. She would tell me to fix my face before anyone saw. He looked up at me, his eyes wet. I learned to freeze. Stella. I learned that if I defended myself, or if I tried to block it, it got worse. So I froze. I learned to take it and smile so she would stop. I looked at my husband. I saw the 8-year-old boy standing inside the 35-year-old man. I understood why he had sat there. I understood why his instinct was silence. It was a survival mechanism he had honed over decades of living in this beautiful, cold house, but understanding him did not mean I could accept it. Not tonight. Not when it was Liam's face stinging. I softened my voice, but I did not soften the message. I am sorry that happened to you. Eric, I truly am. But you are not 8 years old anymore, and Liam is not you. I took a step closer, forcing him to look at me. I need a partner. Eric, not a spectator. I cannot be the only one standing between our son and your mother's hand. I cannot be the only one protecting him. If you cannot break the cycle, then I have to take him away from it. Eric looked at me, the shame burning in his cheeks. I could see the realization hitting him, that his silence was no longer keeping the peace. It was costing him his family. Before he could answer, the kitchen door flew open with a violent bang. Maureen swept in. She had composed herself, at least superficially. The tears were gone, replaced by a mask of righteous indignation. She was no longer the woman who had realized she was being recorded. She was the matriarch who had decided she was the victim. "How dare you?" she hissed, pointing a manicured finger at me. She marched into the center of the kitchen, her heels clicking sharply on the floor. "You have some nerve. Stella," she said, her voice dripping with venom. Creating a scene like that in front of my guests, humiliating me in my own home. I looked at her calmly. The fear I used to feel in her presence was gone. It had evaporated the moment she touched my son. I did not create the scene. "Maureen," I said, "I finished it. You are hysterical." She scoffed. "You always have been. You are too sensitive. You coddle that boy until he is soft. He needs discipline. Stella. He needs to learn that the world does not revolve around his little feelings. If I have to be the bad guy to teach him some manners, then so be it." She turned to Eric, her eyes blazing. "And you?" She spat. "Letting your wife speak to me like that? Letting her drag your son away from the table? It is disgraceful. I raised you better than this." Eric flinched. I saw his shoulders hunch, the automatic response to her aggression. I stepped in front of him. I blocked her view of her son. "We are not discussing my parenting." "Maureen," I said, "and we are certainly not discussing discipline." She laughed, a harsh, incredulous sound. "Oh, please. I barely touched him. He is fine. He is probably in there watching cartoons right now, wondering why his mother is such a drama queen." I looked at her. I looked at the way she stood, so confident in her ability to rewrite reality. She truly believed that if she said it enough times, it would become the truth. She thought she could bully us into accepting her version of events, a version where she was the wise elder and I was the emotional problem. But she had forgotten the one variable she could not control. I kept my voice level. I did not shout. I did not let her see a single crack in my armor. "Please repeat that," I said. "Everyone is recording." Maureen froze. The confidence faltered. Her eyes darted to the kitchen door, then back to me. "Stop saying that," she snapped. But her voice lacked its earlier bite. "No one is recording in here." "Are you sure?" I asked. The door swung open again. This time it was Tessa. Tessa looked pale. She was holding her phone, her knuckles white. She looked from Maureen to me, then to Eric. "Mom," Tessa said, her voice trembling. "What?" Maureen snapped, whipping around. "What is it? Tessa? You made us film everything," Tessa said. Maureen blinked. "What are you talking about?" "For the foundation," Tessa said. "You gave Kara a shot list. You told the blogger to capture authentic family moments. You said you wanted everything documented so we could choose the best clips later." Tessa held up her phone. The blogger's camera was running the whole time. Mom, it was on a tripod near the buffet. I just checked the feed. The color drained from Maureen's face for the second time that night. It is all there, Tessa whispered. The prayer. The comments about Stella's job. And what you did to Liam. It is all in high definition. Maureen stared at her daughter. Her mouth opened, then closed. She looked trapped. Her own vanity, her obsession with image and legacy, had built the cage she was now standing in. Kara pushed past Tessa into the kitchen. She looked frantic. She was no longer the polished socialite. She was a panicked employee. Maureen, we have a problem, Kara said, breathless. I turned to look at Kara. I saw her clearly now. She wasn't just a family friend. She was a handler. Kara, I said. You work for Waverly and Pine, do you not? Kara stopped, looking at me with surprise. Yes. How did you know? It is a crisis management firm. I said, I read the industry news. Maureen did not just invite you for dinner. She hired you. Kara flushed. She looked at Maureen, then back to me. Look, Stella, she said, her voice shifting into professional damage control mode. We can fix this. I have already spoken to the blogger. We can sequester the footage. We can edit it out. It does not have to be a thing. We can just make it go away. I laughed. It was a short, dry sound. You can edit a video file. Kara, I said, but you cannot edit a room full of people. There were 12 people at that table. I continued. You think the Bentleys did not see it? You think they are not texting their friends right now? You think you can NDA an entire Thanksgiving dinner? Kara bit her lip. She knew I was right. My pocket buzzed. I pulled out my phone. It was Joni. I am taking this, I said. I stepped out of the kitchen, through the service door that led to the side porch. The cold November air hit me like a slap, sharp and cleansing. I inhaled deeply, filling my lungs with oxygen that did not smell of expensive perfume and fear. I answered the phone. Joni? Stella. Joni's voice was fast, urgent. You need to know. It is already out. What do you mean? I asked. Kara posted a story, Joni said, about 20 minutes ago. It was a montage of the dinner. She must have uploaded it before the incident. But the end of the clip? It cuts off right as Maureen raises her hand. You can hear the slap. Stella. And you can hear Liam gasp. My stomach dropped. She deleted it. Joni continued. It was only up for maybe 3 minutes. But people saw it. I saw it. My cousin in Grand Rapids saw it. She follows the foundation page. Stella. People are already commenting. They are asking what happened. I closed my eyes. It was worse than I thought. It wasn't just a rumor. It was a digital footprint. Okay, I said. Thank you. Joni. Are you leaving? Joni asked. We are walking out the door in 5 minutes. I said, good. Get out of there. Call me when you are on the highway. I hung up. I stood there for a moment in the dark, looking out at the manicured grounds of the estate, the perfectly trimmed hedges, the statues, the lighting. It was all a facade, and inside, the rot was finally showing through. The door behind me opened. I turned, expecting Eric or maybe Maureen coming for round 2. It was Raymond Halstead, Eric's uncle, Maureen's brother-in-law. He was a tall man, imposing, the family attorney. He looked uncomfortable, holding an unlit cigar. Stella, he said. Raymond, I said, keeping my distance. He sighed, looking out at the yard. I am sorry, he said. That was unfortunate. Unfortunate is when it rains on a picnic. Raymond, I said, that was assault. He winced. I know. Maureen she is not herself lately. He looked at me, his eyes guarded. She is afraid. Stella, afraid of what? I asked. Losing an argument? Losing control. Raymond said. He lowered his voice. You know about the trust changes? I shook my head. I know Eric signed something years ago. I know Maureen manages it. It is more than that. Raymond said. The foundation? It is not just charity. It is a vehicle. Maureen is trying to consolidate the family assets under a single umbrella. She needs to show the board and the donors that the family is a united front, that she has everyone in line. He gestured vaguely toward the house. This dinner? It was a show of force. She needed to prove to the potential donors that she directs the Halstead family, that Eric, and you, and the grandkids, that you all march to her beat. If she cannot control her own table, the donors get nervous. I stared at him. The pieces clicked into place. The unexpected guests, the video testimonials, the obsession with the Halstead legacy. It wasn't just narcissism, it was business. She had monetized her family, and my son was just a prop in her pitch deck. She used us, I said. Raymond shrugged. She considers you assets, and assets are supposed to perform. He looked at me with a strange expression, half apology, half warning. She is going to be desperate now. Stella, you embarrassed her in front of the money. She won't forgive that. I looked him in the eye. I do not want her forgiveness. Raymond, I want her away from my son. I turned and walked back inside. The conversation had clarified everything. This wasn't a family dispute. This was a transaction that had gone wrong, and I was terminating the contract. I walked back into the kitchen. The energy had shifted again. Maureen was on her phone, pacing, barking orders at someone on the other end. Kara was typing furiously on her tablet. Eric was standing exactly where I had left him, staring at the floor. I ignored Maureen and Kara. I walked straight to Eric. I am getting Liam. I said, we are going. I turned to leave the kitchen. Eric didn't move. I walked down the hall to the den. I opened the door. Tessa was sitting on the floor with Liam, playing a card game. The movie was blaring in the background. Liam looked up when I entered. He looked small, his eyes puffy, the red mark on his cheek beginning to bruise. Mom? He asked. Hey, hero, I said, keeping my voice bright. Game over. We are busting out of here. Really? He asked, hope flooding his face. Really? Grab your coat. Tessa stood up. She looked at me, a silent question in her eyes. We are leaving, I told her. Thank you, Tessa, for everything. She hugged me. A quick, fierce squeeze. Go, she whispered. I will handle the cleanup. I helped Liam with his coat. I grabbed my purse. I took his hand. It felt small and warm in mine. We walked out of the den. To get to the front door, we had to pass the dining room. I did not skirt around it. I walked straight through the foyer, past the archway where the guests were still lingering. An awkward, silent congregation. They saw us. They saw the coat on Liam. They saw the bruise on his face. The room went silent. The Bentleys looked down. The blogger watched us. Her camera finally lowered. I stopped for a brief second. I did not look at anyone specifically, but I addressed the room. We are going home. I said, my voice was clear. Liam's well-being is not negotiable. The guests parted. It was almost biblical. They stepped back, creating a wide path to the heavy oak door. They did not say goodbye. They did not try to stop us. They just watched, witnessing the exit of the only people who had dared to tell the truth that evening. I opened the front door. The cold night air rushed in. We walked out onto the porch, down the steps, and toward the car. I unlocked it. Liam climbed into the back seat. I buckled him in. My hands steady now. I got into the driver's seat. I put the key in the ignition, but I didn't turn it. I waited. I looked at the rearview mirror. Liam was looking at me. Mom? He asked. Yeah. Buddy? Am I in trouble? My heart broke a little more. No. Liam, I said, turning around to look at him, you are not in trouble. You did absolutely nothing wrong. Grandma made a bad choice, a very bad choice. And when adults make bad choices, they have to deal with the consequences. He nodded slowly. Okay. I looked out the windshield. The front door of the house was still open. Come on, Eric, I whispered to myself. Come on. 10 seconds passed, then 20. I reached for the ignition. I couldn't wait forever. I had to get Liam home. Then, a shadow appeared in the doorway. Eric walked out, He was wearing his coat. He carried nothing else. He didn't look back at the house. He didn't look at the cars of the wealthy donors. He walked down the steps, his gait heavy but steady. He walked to the passenger side. He opened the door and slid in. The car rocked slightly with his weight. He closed the door, sealing us in. He didn't look at me. He stared straight ahead at the darkness of the driveway. He looked shattered. He looked like a man who had just severed a limb to save his life. "I am coming with you," he said quietly. It wasn't a triumphant declaration. It wasn't a hero's line. It was heavy, laden with grief and the terrifying realization of what came next. But it was real. I nodded. I turned the key. The engine roared to life. I put the car in reverse, backing away from the grand, lit-up facade of the Halstead estate. I didn't look back. I drove us into the dark, toward the highway, toward the city, toward a future that was suddenly very uncertain, but entirely our own. The morning sun that filtered through our bedroom blinds in Briar Glen felt aggressive, a sharp, intrusive reminder that the world had continued turning while our lives had come to a screeching halt. I woke up with a headache that sat behind my eyes like a heavy stone. Beside me, the bed was empty. Eric was already up. I reached for my phone on the nightstand. A reflex I instantly regretted. The screen lit up with a barrage of notifications. There were dozens of texts. Some were from friends I hadn't spoken to in months. People who had seen the ripples of the Thanksgiving disaster spreading through the social ecosystem. Heard things got heated yesterday. You okay? Just saw Kara's story before it vanished. What on earth happened? Call me. And then, a screenshot sent by Joni. It was an image from the official Facebook page of the Halstead Win Initiative. The post had been up for 3 hours. It was a picture of a candle burning in a dark room, artistic and somber. The caption was a masterclass in passive-aggressive narrative building. We ask for prayers for our family during this difficult season. Sometimes, the weight of expectation can cause conflicts that are misunderstood by those outside our circle. We remain committed to our values of discipline, respect, and unity, even when false accusations attempt to divide us. Love is patient, but truth is eternal. I felt a cold burn in my stomach. False accusations. She was already pivoting. She was framing the slap, a physical act witnessed by a dozen people, as a misunderstanding, and my reaction as a lie. She wasn't apologizing. She was martyr baiting. I got out of bed and went downstairs. The house was quiet. Eric was sitting at the kitchen island, staring at a cup of black coffee. He looked like he hadn't slept. His phone was face down on the counter, as if it were a bomb he was afraid to detonate. "Did you see it?" I asked, my voice raspy. He nodded without looking up. "Yeah, Mom posted a statement." "It is not a statement, Eric. It is a spin." "I know," he said. His voice was flat, defeated. I poured myself coffee, my hands steady. I had decided in the middle of the night, somewhere between 3 and 4 in the morning, that I was not going to be a victim of Maureen Halstead's PR machine. I was a mother, and I had a job to do. "I am taking Liam to see someone today," I said. Eric looked up, startled. "A doctor?" "A therapist." I said, "Dr. Russo. She is a child psychologist over on Elm Street. I called her emergency line this morning. She had a cancellation at 11. Eric frowned. "Stella, is that really necessary?" "He is fine. He was playing video games when we got home. He is not fine. Eric, he is quiet. And even if he seems fine, I am not going to wait for the trauma to show up in 6 months as a behavioral issue. He was humiliated by his grandmother in front of strangers. I want a professional to tell me how to handle that, not a blog post." Eric rubbed his face. "Okay, you are right. Do you want me to come?" I looked at him. I wanted to say yes. I wanted to say that I needed him to be the father who drove us there, who sat in the waiting room, who held the line, but looking at him, I saw a man who was barely holding his own psyche together. "No," I said, "you stay here. I think you have some emails to read." I was right. While I was getting Liam dressed, Eric's phone pinged with a notification that made him stiffen. It was an email from the Halstead family office. That was the pretentious name Maureen had given to the small team of accountants and lawyers who managed the family wealth. The subject line was stark. Urgent, compliance and estate documentation review. I left him staring at the screen and took Liam to the appointment. Doctor. Russo's office was warm, filled with soft lighting and toys that looked well-loved. Liam went in alone for the first 20 minutes. I sat in the waiting room, flipping through a magazine without seeing the pages. My mind was racing, replaying the dinner, the slap, the silence. When Dr. Russo called me in, Liam was sitting on a beanbag chair, drawing. He is a resilient boy. Doctor, Russo said, her voice calm and reassuring. She had kind eyes and wore a cardigan that looked like it was knit by a grandmother, a stark contrast to the cashmere armor Maureen wore. He is confused. She continued. He understands that what happened was wrong, but he is struggling with the why. In his mind, grandmothers are safe people. When a safe person becomes unsafe, it creates a wobble in their world. What do? I asked. We validate, she said. We tell him it is okay to be angry. We tell him that adults make mistakes, and that you protected him. The most important thing for him right now is to know that the boundary held. You stopped it. That is what will keep him from internalizing the shame. I nodded, feeling a lump form in my throat. The boundary held. It was the only victory I had. On the drive home, we stopped for ice cream. It was 40 degrees outside, but Liam wanted chocolate mint, and I wasn't going to say no. Mom? He asked, licking a drip from the cone. Yeah, Bud? Is Grandma mad at us? I gripped the steering wheel. Yes, Liam, she probably is. Because we left? Because we did not let her treat you badly. I said firmly, sometimes people get mad when you tell them to stop being mean. That does not mean you did anything wrong. It means they have some learning to do. He thought about this for a moment, like when Tyler gets mad because I won't let him cheat at tag. Exactly like that. I said, when we got back to the house. The energy had shifted. Eric was pacing the living room. He looked less like a victim now and more like a trapped animal. You need to see this, he said as soon as I walked in the door. He handed me his tablet. The email from the Halstead family office was open. I scanned the text. It was written in dense, legalistic jargon, but the message was clear enough. Dear Mr. Halstead, due to recent restructuring of the Halstead Family Trust and associated philanthropic entities, the Board of Trustees has initiated a discretionary review of all beneficiary distributions. Please be advised that effective immediately, your quarterly distribution is paused pending a compliance interview regarding adherence to the Trust's Code of Conduct. I looked up. Code of Conduct? Eric let out a bitter laugh. I know. I did not even know there was a code of conduct. There is always a catch. I said, what else? He scrolled down. Furthermore, the LLC that holds the title to your vehicle requires an updated insurance verification and usage audit. Failure to provide this within 48 hours may result in the recall of the asset. They are threatening to take your car? I asked. Incredulous. Technically, the family office owns the car, Eric said. It was a birthday gift 3 years ago, or I thought it was a gift. Apparently, it is a leased asset. This is retaliation. I said, pure and simple. She is squeezing you. She wants you to panic. She wants you to call her and beg. I know, Eric said, and the worst part is, I do not even know what rights I have. I signed so many papers. Stella. Over the years, Mom would just slide a stack across the counter and say, sign here. It saves us taxes. And I signed. We need a lawyer. I said, we have a lawyer. Eric said, Uncle Raymond. No, I said sharply. We do not have a lawyer. The family has a lawyer. Raymond works for Maureen. We need someone who works for us. I called Joni. She gave me a name within 5 minutes. Mariah Klein. Mariah Klein was not a high society attorney. Her office was in a strip mall next to a dry cleaner, and her waiting room smelled faintly of coffee and old paper. But when we sat down in her office an hour later, I knew we were in the right place. She was a woman in her 50s with sharp glasses and a no-nonsense demeanor that I instantly liked. She listened to Eric explain the situation. She looked at the email. She looked at the few documents Eric had managed to dig up from his digital files. Then she took off her glasses and rubbed the bridge of her nose. "Okay," Mariah said. "Here is the reality. You are in a bind, but you are not helpless." She tapped the printout of the email. "This code of conduct clause? It is a standard leverage tool in high net worth trusts. It is designed to keep beneficiaries in line. Usually, it is vague enough to cover anything from drug arrests to actions that bring disrepute to the family name. Like a viral video of a Thanksgiving slap?" I asked. "Exactly," Mariah said. "Your mother is arguing that the publicity surrounding the incident is damaging the family brand, and therefore, you are in breach. It is flimsy, but it is enough to freeze the money while they investigate, and in legal time, an investigation can take months. Can you survive without that quarterly distribution?" Eric nodded. "My salary covers our bills. The distribution was extra, savings, Liam's college fund." "Good," Mariah said. "If you do not need the money to buy groceries, you have power. The money is her only leash. If you show her you can walk without it, the leash snaps." "What about the paperwork I signed?" Eric asked. "The beneficiary update?" Mariah pulled a document from the pile Eric had brought. "This is the tricky part," she said. 2 years ago, you signed an amendment to the trust. It changed your status from a mandatory beneficiary to a discretionary beneficiary. What does that mean?" I asked. "It means," Mariah said, looking directly at Eric, "that you gave up your right to guaranteed money. Instead, you gave a committee the power to decide if and when you get paid. And guess who sits on that committee?" "Maureen," Eric whispered. "Maureen, Raymond, and a corporate trustee who likely votes however Maureen tells him to." Mariah confirmed. "You thought you were signing tax forms. In reality, you were signing a permission slip for your mother to control your financial future." Eric looked sick. I sat there and let the anger crystallize into something useful. "So, how do we fight it?" I asked. "We do not fight the trust," Mariah said. "Not yet. That is a losing battle right now. We fight the narrative. We document everything, every text, every email, every threat. If they take the car, let them take it. Buy a used Honda. Do not engage in the tug of war, because they have more rope." She leaned forward. "Your mother is trying to provoke a reaction. She wants you to scream, sue, or apologize. If you do nothing, if you go silent and live your life, she loses her leverage." We left Mariah's office with a plan. It wasn't a satisfying plan. It involved a lot of waiting and documenting, but it was a strategy. As we walked to the car that might be repossessed in 48 hours, my phone buzzed. It was a direct message on Instagram, from Kara. I stopped on the sidewalk. Eric looked at me. "Who is it?" "Kara," I said. I opened the message. "Stella, I am so sorry about yesterday. It was chaotic and I know emotions were high. Maureen is really devastated. She feels like she's been painted as a villain when she was just trying to help Liam. Look, we are trying to do damage control for the foundation. If you could just state publicly that Maureen didn't mean it, that it was a misunderstanding or a game that went wrong, it would really help calm things down. We can put this all behind us." I stared at the screen. The audacity was breathtaking. An apology that was actually a transaction. "I am sorry. Now please lie for us." Eric looked over my shoulder. "Do not reply," he said. "I am not going to reply to her." I said, "But I am going to say something." I opened my text messages. I selected a group chat that included my parents, Eric's rational cousins, and a few close friends, the people who actually mattered. I typed a single message. "We left Thanksgiving early to protect our child's emotional safety. That is our only priority. We won't be discussing details or responding to rumors. We appreciate your respect for our privacy." I hit send. It was boring. It was dry. It was factual. And it was the only thing that would save us. By refusing to engage in the drama, I was refusing to give Maureen more fuel for her fire. We got home as the sun was setting. The house felt like a bunker. We ordered pizza because neither of us had the energy to cook. At 7 o'clock, the doorbell rang. I checked the peephole. It was Tessa. I opened the door. Tessa looked like she had been crying for hours. Her eyes were red, and she was wearing sweatpants, which for a Halstead was a sign of a mental breakdown. "Can I come in?" she asked. "Of course," I said, stepping back. She walked in and collapsed onto the sofa. Eric came in from the kitchen, wiping his hands on a towel. "How is it over there?" Eric asked. "It is a war zone," Tessa said. "Mom is on the phone constantly. She is calling every relative, every donor, every board member. She is telling them that Stella weaponized a misunderstanding." I laughed, a sharp bark of sound. "Weaponized?" "She hit my son." "Tessa, I know," Tessa said quickly. "I know. But that is not the story she is telling. She is saying you have been looking for a reason to isolate Eric from the family for years. She is saying you are jealous of the family money. She is saying Liam is out of control and she was the only one brave enough to discipline him." Eric slammed his hand onto the coffee table. "That is a lie. It does not matter if it is a lie." "Eric," Tessa shouted back, "it matters that she is saying it to the people who control your inheritance." Tessa took a breath, lowering her voice. "She is planning a family meeting. Eric, Sunday night. She is going to demand that you come. She says it is time for you to choose sides. She says if you do not show up, you are confirming that you have betrayed the family." Eric sank into the armchair. He put his head in his hands. I looked at Tessa. "Thank you for telling us. I am scared." "Stella," Tessa whispered. "She is talking about legal action. Grandparents' rights. She is talking about suing for visitation." My blood ran cold. Grandparents' rights. It was the nuclear option. "She won't win," I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. "No judge is going to grant visitation to a woman who was recorded slapping the child. You do not know her lawyers." Tessa said, "They play dirty." After Tessa left, the silence in the house was heavy. Liam was asleep upstairs. Eric and I sat in the living room, the TV off, the darkness pressing against the windows. "We need to talk," I said. Eric didn't look up. "About what?" "The car? The money? The fact that my mother is trying to destroy us?" "About trust." I said. He looked at me then. "You do not trust me?" "I trust you, Eric. But I do not trust your nervous system." I moved to sit on the coffee table, directly in front of him. I took his hands. They were cold. "I saw you today. Eric, when that email came through, you panicked. You were terrified." "Of course I was terrified," he snapped, pulling his hands away. "She is cutting me off. Stella, do you know what that means? It means the safety net is gone. It means if I lose my job, we have nothing. It means Liam's college is on us. It means we are on our own. We have always been on our own." "Eric," I said, "we just didn't realize it. The safety net was a trap. It was always a trap." I stood up, pacing the rug. "I need to know that you can handle this." I said, "I need to know that when she puts the pressure on, and she will put the pressure on, you are not going to collapse. Because if you collapse, if you go back to her and apologize just to get the money turned back on, you are teaching Liam that boundaries are for sale." "I am not going to apologize," Eric said. "But I am scared. Stella. I have never stood up to her like this. Not really. I know." I said, "That is why we need a hard line." I stopped pacing and looked at him. "No contact." I said, "What? No contact? Through the holidays? No Christmas? No New Year's? No emails? No phone calls? We block her number. We block the house number. If she wants to talk to us, she goes through a mediator. And we require written boundaries before we even consider seeing her again." Eric looked stricken. "Christmas? But the family, the cousins. There is no family." "Eric," I said, my voice rising, "there is a corporation that demands obedience in exchange for turkey and checks. That is not a family." I sat back down next to him, softening my tone. We can have our own Christmas. We can make pancakes. We can stay in our pajamas. We can be happy, but we cannot go back there. Not until she understands that we are not her subjects. Eric looked at the floor for a long time. I could see the struggle. He was mourning the idea of the family he wanted, the fantasy of the happy Halstead Christmas that never actually existed. Finally, he nodded. "Okay," he said. "Pause the holidays. No contact." I exhaled, a tension I hadn't realized I was holding leaving my shoulders. "Thank you." We went upstairs to bed. I thought the day was over. I thought we had weathered the first wave. But Maureen Halstead was not a woman who believed in waiting. At 10 o'clock, just as we were brushing our teeth, the doorbell rang again. It wasn't Tessa this time. Eric went down to answer it. I stood at the top of the stairs, listening. I heard a deep, unfamiliar voice. "Mr. Halstead? I have a delivery for a Miss Stella Bryant." I walked down the stairs. A courier was standing in the doorway, holding a thick envelope. He looked bored. "I am Stella Bryant," I said. "Sign here, please." I signed the digital pad. He handed me the envelope. It was heavy, stiff cardboard. I closed the door and locked it. I looked at the return address. Waverly Pine Media, Legal Division. I opened it right there in the hallway. It was a letter. The paper was thick, cream-colored, expensive. "Dear Ms. Bryant, we represent Maureen Halstead and the Halstead Win Initiative. It has come to our attention that you have made, and continue to make, defamatory implications regarding Mrs. Halstead's character and conduct during a private family gathering on November 28th. Your actions, including the verbal harassment of Mrs. Halstead in the presence of guests and the subsequent dissemination of false narratives to third parties, have caused significant reputational harm to our client and her charitable endeavors. We hereby demand that you cease and desist all defamatory statements immediately. Furthermore, we are preparing a civil suit for damages related to the interference with prospective economic advantage regarding the Foundation's donor relations. Govern yourself accordingly." I read it twice. Defamatory implications, verbal harassment. She was suing me for ruining her dinner party. She was claiming that my 6 words had cost her money. I looked at Eric. He was reading over my shoulder, his face pale. "She is suing you?" he whispered. I felt a bubble of laughter rising in my chest. It was absurd. It was insane. It was the desperate flailing of a woman who had lost the plot. I laughed. One single, sharp sound. Then, the cold set in. This wasn't just a temper tantrum anymore. This was a sophisticated, funded attack. She wasn't just trying to hurt my feelings. She was trying to destroy my credibility. She was trying to bankrupt us with legal fees. She was turning a family dispute into image warfare. My hands went cold. I looked at the letter, then at the front door. "She wants a war," I said quietly. I looked at Eric. The fear was still in his eyes. But something else was there too. A spark of anger. "She is suing the mother of her grandchild." Eric said, "Yes," I said. He took the letter from my hand. He looked at it. Then he crumpled it into a ball. "Call Mariah in the morning," Eric said. His voice was different now. "Harder. We are not settling this one." He walked into the kitchen and threw the ball of paper into the trash. I stood in the hallway, listening to the wind rattle the frame of the door. The fresh start was over. The siege had begun. I sat in Mariah Klein's office the next morning. The crumpled letter from Waverly Pines smoothed out on her desk. The winter sun cut through the blinds, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air, a mundane calmness that contrasted sharply with the legal threat sitting between us. Mariah read the letter, her expression unreadable. Then she leaned back in her creaky leather chair and took off her glasses. "This is what we call a scare letter, Stella," she said, her voice dry. "It is designed to look terrifying. It uses big words like defamatory implications and prospective economic advantage. But legally, it is mostly smoke." "Smoke?" I asked, my heart still hammering a rhythm of anxiety against my ribs. They are accusing you of damaging her reputation. Mariah explained, but truth is an absolute defense against defamation. Did you harass her? No. Did you lie? No. You stated a fact. Everyone is recording. If her reputation is damaged, it is because of her own actions, not your observation of them. She tapped the paper with a manicured fingernail. Wealthy families use this tactic all the time. It is a PR legal fog. They want you to be so afraid of a lawsuit that you silence yourself. They want you to sign an NDA just to make the threat go away. So what do? I asked. We respond. Mariah said, but we do not play their game. We keep it brief. We state that you have made no public allegations, which is true. You have been remarkably disciplined, and that any attempt to intimidate you through frivolous legal threats will be documented and used as evidence of harassment in any future custody or family court proceedings. She looked at me, her eyes sharp. That usually shuts them up. It tells them you are not scared, and you are not stupid, while I was strategizing with Mariah. Eric was walking into the lion's den. He had agreed to meet his uncle, Raymond Halstead, for coffee. Not at the estate, but at a diner near Eric's office. I had been against it, but Eric insisted. He needed to know what was happening with the trust, and Raymond was the only one who would talk. When Eric came home that evening, he looked different, not defeated, like he usually did after dealing with his family, but angry, a cold, focused anger. I know why she's doing this, he said, pacing the kitchen while I chopped vegetables for dinner. The money? I asked. It is bigger than the money, Eric said. It is the foundation. Raymond told me everything. Mom has been trying to court a major donor for 6 months. Someone who can put the Halstead Win initiative on the national map. Millions of dollars. Stella. Who is it? I asked. He stopped pacing. Vaughn Mercer. The name meant nothing to me. Who is Vaughn Mercer? He is a billionaire philanthropist, Eric said. But more importantly, he is my old mentor. I put the knife down. What? When I was 22. Right out of college. I did an internship at Mercer Industries in Chicago. Vaughn took a shine to me. He taught me about architecture, about business ethics. He is a good man. He is obsessed with values-based giving. He hates drama. He wants his money to go to organizations that are stable, ethical, and family-oriented. I leaned against the counter, the pieces falling into place. So Thanksgiving, I started. It was a pitch, Eric said, a live demonstration. Mom knew Vaughn's people were watching. She wanted to show them that the Halstead family is a perfect, cohesive unit. She wanted to show them that she has control over the next generation, meaning me. She needs me as the family face to close the deal with Vaughn. I laughed, a sound devoid of humor. So when I stopped the dinner, you didn't just ruin a meal, Eric said. You ruined her sales pitch. You showed Vaughn's team exactly what she is trying to hide, that she is a tyrant, and that her perfect family is a sham. That explains everything. I said, the video, the urgency, the lawsuit. She is terrified that Vaughn is going to walk. She thinks if she can bully us into silence or force us to issue a statement saying it was all a joke. She can salvage the deal, Eric said. He looked at me. Raymond said she is desperate. She has leveraged a lot of her own liquidity to set this foundation up. If Vaughn doesn't come through, she is overextended. I felt a sudden, sharp clarity. We weren't fighting a grandmother who missed her grandson. We were fighting a CEO who was losing a merger. The next day, my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail. The message was from a woman named Sarah, an administrative assistant at Waverly Pine. Ms. Bryant, Mrs. Halstead is requesting a meeting to resolve the current misunderstanding. She suggests Juniper House Cafe tomorrow at 2 o'clock. She believes a face-to-face conversation is necessary to move forward. I called Mariah. Go. Mariah said, but with conditions, neutral ground, no children, and a professional mediator present. I have a colleague, David Chen, who handles high-conflict family disputes. I will send him with you. We arrived at Juniper House Cafe 10 minutes early. It was a trendy, quiet spot with high-backed booths that offered privacy. David Chen was already there. He was a calm, soft-spoken man who radiated patience. Eric and I sat on one side of the booth. Maureen and Kara arrived precisely at 2. Maureen looked tired. Her makeup was perfect, but there was a tightness around her eyes that concealer couldn't hide. She wore a black suit that looked like armor. Kara sat next to her, holding a tablet and a recording device. "Mrs. Halstead," David began, his voice even, "I am here to facilitate a productive conversation. I understand you wish to record this meeting?" "For accountability," Maureen said, her voice crisp. "I want to ensure there is no confusion about what is said." "Fine," David said. "We consent to the recording. However, let us be clear about the ground rules. No interruptions, no insults. We are here to discuss boundaries moving forward." Maureen nodded stiffly. "Stella," she began, looking at me with a pained expression, "I wanted to meet because I think things have gotten out of hand. I am willing to put this behind us." I said nothing. I let the silence stretch. "If I startled Liam," she continued, choosing her words carefully, "I am sorry. It was a chaotic moment. But you have to admit, Stella, you escalated the situation. You pushed me. You made a scene in front of my guests that was completely unnecessary." I felt Eric tense beside me. I placed a hand on his arm. "Maureen," I said, my voice steady, "I am not here to debate your intent, and I am not here to debate my reaction. I am here to tell you what needs to happen if you want any relationship with my son." Maureen's eyes narrowed. "Here are the boundaries." I said, 1. No physical discipline of Liam, ever. 2. No public correction or humiliation of him. 3. No filming him without our explicit, verbal consent in the moment. 4. No comments about my employment or my place in this family. And 5. No unsupervised visits with Liam until further notice. Maureen scoffed. "Unsupervised? I am his grandmother, not a criminal. You struck him." "Maureen," I said, "in my world, that forfeits the right to be alone with him." Kara leaned forward. "Stella, be reasonable. The video is irrelevant to my parenting decisions." I cut in, "The video is a PR problem for you. The safety of my son is the only thing I care about." David Chen interjected, "Mrs. Halstead, these seem like standard boundaries for re-establishing trust. Can you agree to them?" Maureen looked at David, then at me. Her mask slipped. The grieving grandmother vanished, replaced by the negotiator. "And what do I get?" she asked. "You get to see your grandson," Eric said. "Eventually, if you can follow the rules." Maureen laughed bitterly. "I see. So I am to be treated like a child on probation? While Stella dictates the terms?" She turned to Eric. "You need to think very carefully about this. Eric, the trust distribution is up for review next week. The committee is looking for evidence that the beneficiaries are acting in the best interest of the family legacy. Allowing your wife to alienate your mother, that does not look like best interest to me. The threat was naked. Do what I say, or I cut off the money." The room went quiet. The recorder on the table hummed. Eric took a deep breath. He looked at his mother. He looked at Kara. Then he looked at me. I saw the fear in his eyes. Yes, but I also saw the exhaustion. He was tired of being bought. "Mom," Eric said. His voice was not loud, but it was clear. "If my financial comfort depends on my son's humiliation, keep it." Maureen blinked. "Excuse me?" "Keep the money," Eric said. "Keep the trust. Keep the car. I do not care. If the price of that check is letting you hit my son or disrespect my wife, I can't afford it anymore." Maureen stared at him. She had played her ace, and he had folded the game. She didn't know what to do. Kara, who had been silent, suddenly spoke up. "Maureen, maybe we should—" "Quiet. Kara," Maureen snapped. "No," Kara said, her voice shaking. "This isn't working. Look, Eric, Stella, she has footage." Maureen whipped her head around. "Kara, she has been collecting clips for years." Kara blurted out. Not just Thanksgiving. She has videos of you arguing, videos of Liam having tantrums. She has a whole archive. She told me to organize them into a liability folder in case we needed to control the narrative. I felt the blood drain from my face. A liability folder. She had been spying on us, documenting our worst moments to use as ammunition. Kara looked at me, her eyes pleading. I didn't want to do it. I was hired to manage optics, not blackmail. Maureen stood up. Her chair scraped violently against the floor. That is enough, she shouted. She looked at Kara with pure venom. You are fired. Get out. Kara grabbed her bag and scrambled out of the booth, leaving the recorder running. Maureen turned to us. She was trembling with rage. The polished facade was gone. This was the woman who had slapped my son. You think you have won? She hissed. You think you can walk away from me? I built this family. I own this family. Maureen, David said, standing up. I will handle this in the proper arena, Maureen said, pointing a finger at Eric. You want to play hardball? Fine. Let us see how you do when I petition for grandparents' rights. Let us see how you do when I subpoena your financial records and prove you are unfit to provide the lifestyle that boy is accustomed to. She grabbed her purse. You will hear from my lawyers. She stormed out of the cafe. The silence she left behind was heavy, filled with the hum of the espresso machine and the quiet murmur of other patrons who had undoubtedly heard the outburst. Eric sat there, staring at the table. He looked shell-shocked. She has a folder, he whispered. I reached across the table and took his hand. It is okay, I said. It is better that we know. That night, the house in Briar Glen felt different. It was no longer a bunker. It was a command center. We put Liam to bed early. We didn't tell him about the meeting. We just told him we loved him. Then, Eric and I sat at the kitchen table with laptops open. We didn't drink wine. We drank water. We needed clear heads. First, the money, Eric said. He logged into their joint account, the one connected to the family office. He transferred his salary, every cent that wasn't legally tied to the trust, into a new account he had opened that afternoon at a credit union. She can freeze the trust, he said, but she can't touch my paycheck. Next, passwords. I said, we changed everything. Email, social media, banking. We set up two-factor authentication on every account. We locked down our digital lives. Then, the legal documents. We need to update our wills. I said. Eric nodded. If something happens to us, we cannot let her get custody. I finished. We drafted a letter of intent to Mariah Klein, stating explicitly that in the event of our deaths, custody of Liam should go to my sister in Ohio. We listed Maureen as a person who should have no unsupervised contact. It was morbid, but it was necessary. It wasn't dramatic work. It wasn't screaming or crying. It was the quiet, boring, essential work of severing the cords that had bound Eric to his mother for 35 years. At midnight, Eric closed his laptop. I feel lighter, he said. Lighter? I asked. I am broke, he said with a wry smile. Or close to it. The Audi is probably gone tomorrow. We might have to skip the vacation this year. But I don't have to wonder what she is going to do next. Because I don't care. I kissed him. I was proud of him. He had finally stepped out of the shadow. 2 days later, the invitation arrived. It was heavy, cream-colored cardstock with gold embossing. The Halstead Win Initiative invites you to a gala of gratitude. It was addressed to Mr. Eric Halstead. Just him, not Mr. and Mrs. Halstead, not the Halstead family. I looked at the RSVP card. It was for a single seat. She is trying to split us, I said, handing the invitation to Eric. He looked at it. A gala of gratitude? Is she serious? Read the bottom, I said. He squinted at the fine print, featuring a special family announcement regarding the future stewardship of the foundation. Eric looked up. She is going to announce that I'm taking over, without asking you? She thinks if she announces it in front of 500 people, and in front of Vaughn Mercer. I won't be able to say no. She thinks I will be too polite to humiliate her twice. She is betting on your conditioning. I said, she is betting that the well-trained boy will show up. Eric tapped the card against his chin. And if I don't show up? Then she spins it. I said, she tells the room you are ill, or that I kept you away. She controls the narrative. Eric stood quiet for a moment. I have to go, he said. I felt a spike of fear. Eric. No. I have to go. Stella. But not to join her. He looked at me, and his eyes were clear. She wants a public choice? Fine. I will give her one. The invitation to the Gala of Gratitude sat on our kitchen counter like a physical threat. It was heavy, cream-colored, and smelled faintly of the lavender scent Maureen used to pump through the HV.IC system of her estate. It was addressed to Eric alone. It was a summons, not a request. Eric stood in the kitchen, staring at it, his hands deep in his pockets. He was dressed in his work clothes, but he looked like he was wearing a straitjacket. I should go, he said, his voice low. I stopped washing the dishes and turned to look at him. Why? To contain the damage, he said. He looked up at me, his eyes tired. If I do not go, she controls the narrative. She will tell everyone I am sick, or that I am unstable, or that you forbade me from coming. She will spin my absence into a tragedy where she is the victim. If I go, I can just stand there. I can be polite. I can show everyone that I am normal and that we are fine. I dried my hands on a towel and walked over to the island. I placed my hands on the cold marble, leaning in until I caught his gaze. Eric, look at me. He met my eyes. She does not want you there to be polite. I said, she wants a photo. He frowned. A photo? She wants one picture. Eric, one high-resolution image of you standing next to her, smiling, with her hand on your arm. She will put it on the foundation website. She will send it to the donor list. She will post it on social media with a caption about the unbreakable bond of family. I took a breath, letting the reality sink in. That photo will overwrite everything. It will overwrite the slap. It will overwrite the boundaries we set. It will tell the world that what she did to Liam was acceptable because you came back for dessert. It is not damage control. Eric, it is a victory lap. Eric looked at the invitation again. He ran a hand through his hair. I can't just let her win. Stella, you are not letting her win by staying home. I said, you are refusing to play the game. I stepped back. But I am not your mother. I am not going to tell you what to do. I am not going to forbid you from going. That is not how a partnership works. I picked up the invitation and slid it across the counter toward him. You decide, Eric, but I need you to know that I will make my own decisions based on what you choose. If you go and stand on that stage, I will have to assume that you are not ready to protect us, and I will have to act accordingly. He looked at me, startled by the calm finality in my tone. You mean you would leave? I mean I would protect my peace, I said, however I have to. The next 24 hours were a waiting game. Eric didn't say yes or no. He just existed in a state of high-voltage anxiety. Then, the intel started coming in. Tessa called me while I was at work. She sounded breathless, like she was hiding in a closet. Stella, you need to know what the announcement is, she whispered. The special family announcement? I asked. Yes, Mom is appointing Eric to the board. She is naming him the family steward of the foundation. I felt a cold chill. Without asking him? She doesn't think she needs to ask. Tessa said, she drafted the bylaws yesterday. The position comes with a stipend, a big one. It is routed through the trust committee, so it bypasses the usual checks. She is going to announce it live. She thinks if she hands him a title and a check in front of 500 people, he won't be able to say no. It is a golden handcuff. I said, it is a trap. Tessa corrected. If he accepts it, he is on her payroll forever. If he rejects it, he humiliates the family in public. She thinks he is too polite to do the second one. I hung up and texted Eric. She is naming you family steward. It comes with a salary. He didn't reply. An hour later, my phone rang again. It was a number with a Chicago area code. "This is Stella Bryant." I answered. "Ms. Bryant, my name is Eleanor Vance. I am the executive assistant to Vaughn Mercer." My heart skipped a beat. Vaughn Mercer, the billionaire donor, the target of Maureen's entire Thanksgiving performance. "Mr. Mercer asked me to reach out." Eleanor said. Her voice was professional, cool, and utterly devoid of nonsense. "We have received some conflicting reports regarding the Halstead family dynamic. As you know, Mr. Mercer is considering a significant partnership with Mrs. Halstead's foundation." I said nothing. I let her continue. "However," Eleanor said, "Mr. Mercer is a man who values stability. He has heard rumors of an incident involving law enforcement, or perhaps a domestic dispute. The stories are varying wildly. He wanted to speak to you directly, as he understands you were present." I closed my eyes. Maureen must have been spinning chaos to explain the Thanksgiving silence. "Ms. Vance," I said, keeping my voice steady. "There was no law enforcement involved, and I would not characterize it as a domestic dispute." "Then how would you characterize it?" she asked. I took a breath. I chose honesty, not the screaming, crying version of the truth, but the cold, hard facts. "We have established safety boundaries to protect our son." I said, "Mrs. Halstead crossed a line regarding physical discipline and emotional safety. We removed our child from the situation. That is all. We are not interested in a scandal, but we are also not interested in exposing our son to that environment again." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "I see," Eleanor said. "Thank you for your candor. Ms. Bryant, Mr. Mercer appreciates clarity." She hung up. I put the phone down, my hands shaking. I hadn't destroyed Maureen's reputation. I had simply refused to lie to save it. The night of the gala arrived. It was a Tuesday, a rainy, miserable evening that felt perfect for the death of a dynasty. I stayed home. I had made a promise to Liam that tonight would be a yes night. It was a silly tradition we had started years ago where the answer to almost anything, within reason, was yes. "Can we order extra pepperoni?" Yes. "Can we build a fort in the living room?" Yes. "Can we watch the movie where the dog plays basketball?" Yes. We built a fortress out of sofa cushions and blankets. We ate pizza out of the box. The house was warm, smelling of yeast and tomato sauce. A sharp contrast to the cold, sterile grandeur I knew was happening across town at the Hotel DuPont, after the movie, while Liam was sleepy and soft. We did our gratitude list. It was something I wanted to reclaim from Maureen. She had used gratitude as a weapon. I wanted to use it as a shield. "I will go first," I said. "I am thankful for this fort. And for pepperoni." Liam smiled, his eyelids drooping. "I am thankful for video games," he murmured. "Anything else?" He thought for a moment. He looked at me, his eyes clear and trusting. "I am thankful my mom believes me." He said. I felt the air leave my lungs. I swallowed hard, forcing the tears back. I could not cry. Not now. I needed to be the rock. "You are welcome. Baby," I whispered. "I will always believe you." I tucked him into his bed upstairs. I turned on his nightlight. I went back downstairs and sat in the kitchen. I looked at the clock. It was 8:30. The speeches would be starting. I didn't know where Eric was. He had left the house at 6. Wearing his tuxedo, he hadn't said a word. He just kissed me on the forehead, grabbed his keys, and walked out. I stared at my phone, waiting, at the Hotel DuPont. The ballroom was a sea of black ties and sequins. The air smelled of expensive flowers and ambition. Maureen Halstead was in her element. She moved through the crowd like a queen, greeting donors, laughing at jokes, touching arms. She looked triumphant. She had done it. She had secured the venue. She had secured the audience. And she believed she had secured her son. Eric had arrived early. He didn't enter through the main doors where the photographers were waiting. He came in through a side entrance. He didn't take a drink. He didn't mingle. He found Eleanor Vance near the stage and asked for 5 minutes with Vaughn Mercer. Mercer was in a private holding room, reviewing his notes. He was a man in his 60s, silver-haired, with eyes that had seen every trick in the book. When Eric walked in, Mercer stood up. "Eric," Mercer said warmly, "it has been a long time." "It has." "Vaughn," Eric said. Eric didn't waste time. He didn't badmouth his mother. He didn't talk about the slap. He talked about the one thing Vaughn Mercer respected: values. "I can't serve on this board." "Vaughn," Eric said quietly. Mercer looked at him, studying his face. "Why not?" "Because this foundation talks about family values," Eric said, "but it uses children as props. It uses relationships as leverage. I learned a lot from you about integrity, Vaughn, and I promised myself I wouldn't lend my name to an organization that uses money to silence people." Mercer was silent for a long moment. He looked at Eric, really looked at him. "I heard there was an incident," Mercer said. "There was." Eric said, "And I chose my wife and son. I just wanted you to know that before I go out there." Mercer nodded slowly. He didn't smile, but his eyes softened. "You are a good man." Eric, at 9 o'clock. The lights in the ballroom dimmed. A spotlight hit the stage. Maureen walked out to thunderous applause. She looked radiant. She stood at the podium, basking in the adoration. "Thank you," she said, her voice trembling with practiced emotion. "Thank you all for being here to celebrate the legacy of the Halstead family." She spoke for 10 minutes about duty, about tradition, about the sacred bond of blood. She painted a picture of a family that was unbreakable, guided by faith and discipline. "And now," she said, smiling broadly, "I have a very special announcement, a surprise that is close to my heart. I would like to invite my son, Eric Halstead, to the stage." The applause rose again. The spotlight swept the room. Searching, Eric stepped out from the wings. He walked up the stairs to the stage. He didn't smile. He didn't wave. He walked with a grim determination. Maureen reached out to hug him. Eric stepped sideways, avoiding her touch. He moved directly to the microphone. The room quieted. There was something in his body language that signaled this was not part of the script. Maureen's smile faltered. Just for a second. Eric looked out at the crowd. He saw the faces of the town's elite. He saw the people who had judged me for years. He saw the donors. "Thank you, Mom," Eric said. His voice echoed in the silent hall. He paused. "I am honored by the offer to lead this foundation," he said. Maureen let out a breath she had been holding. She took a half step forward, ready to reclaim the moment, but Eric wasn't finished. However, he continued, his voice hardening. "I cannot accept it." A murmur rippled through the room. Maureen froze. "I am stepping away from the foundation," Eric said, "and I am stepping away from the family business." He looked directly at Maureen. "We talk a lot about values in this family," he said. "We talk about respect. But until this family practices what it preaches behind closed doors, I cannot be a part of it. My priority is my wife and my son, and their safety is not for sale." He stepped back from the microphone. The silence was absolute. It was a vacuum that sucked the air out of the room. Maureen looked like she had been shot. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. She looked at the crowd, her eyes wide with panic. She saw the confusion turning into realization. "Eric," she hissed, forgetting the microphone was still live. She lunged for the podium. "He is tired," she shouted to the crowd, her voice shrill. "He doesn't mean it. Stella put him up to this. She is manipulating him." It was the wrong move. In her desperation, she revealed the ugliness underneath. She blamed the outsider. She blamed the wife. She showed everyone exactly who she was. In the front row, Vaughn Mercer stood up. He didn't make a scene. He simply buttoned his jacket. He looked at Maureen. Then he looked at his team. He made a small, cutting motion with his hand. He turned and walked out. It was a quiet exit, but it was deafening in its impact. The billionaire anchor donor had just left the building. The room's energy collapsed. It went from admiration to discomfort, and then to a cold, hard distance. Donors began checking their phones. People started looking for their coats. The spell was broken. Maureen stood on stage, watching the backs of the people she had spent a lifetime trying to impress. Her social power was evaporating in real time. It wasn't a dramatic explosion. It was a slow, agonizing leak. Her friends avoided eye contact. The Bentleys were suddenly very interested in their dessert. The blogger, who had been live streaming, lowered her phone and turned it off. Kara, standing in the wings, looked like she might cry. She knew her career with Waverly Pine was over. Eric didn't wait to watch the carnage. He walked down the stairs, past the stunned faces, and out the side door. He walked out into the rain. He loosened his tie. He took a deep breath of the wet, cold air. He pulled out his phone and called me. I picked up on the first ring. "Eric?" "I did it," he said. His voice was shaking, vibrating with the aftershocks of adrenaline. "Are you okay?" I asked. I didn't freeze. Stella. I stood there, and I didn't freeze. I closed my eyes, leaning my head against the kitchen cabinet. I didn't celebrate. This wasn't a party. It was a tragedy that had been necessary. "Come home," I said softly. The climax of the night came 2 hours later. Eric was home. He had changed into sweatpants. We were sitting on the couch, the silence between us comfortable and real. My phone rang. It was Maureen. I looked at Eric. He nodded. I answered it and put it on speaker. "Stella." Maureen's voice was unrecognizable. It was jagged, fast, breathless. It was the voice of a woman who was drowning. "Maureen," I said. "Listen to me," she said. "Listen. We can fix this. I can fix this. I have talked to the lawyers. We can issue a joint statement. We can say Eric was confused. We can say it was a medical reaction." I said nothing. "Stella, please," she said. "Do you know what you have done? Mercer is gone. The board is calling emergency meetings. They are talking about removing me. That sounds like a board problem. Maureen, I will give you the money," she said. The desperation ratcheted up. "I will unfreeze the trust. I will double the distribution. I will sign over the deed to the lake house." "You want the lake house? It is yours. Just tell Eric to come back. Tell him to post a retraction." I looked at Eric. He was watching the phone with a look of profound pity. He wasn't afraid of her anymore. He just felt sorry for her. She was offering us everything she had: money, property, status. She was emptying her pockets, trying to buy back the influence she had lost. She truly believed that everything had a price tag. "Maureen," I said quietly. "What? What do you want? Name it." "Stella, what do you want?" I took a deep breath. "You can't buy your way back into our peace." I hung up. I blocked the number. I put the phone on the coffee table. The house was quiet. Upstairs, Liam was sleeping, safe and believed. Beside me, my husband was free, and I was finally, truly, the author of my own story. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I hope you found Stella and Eric's journey as powerful as I did. It's a reminder that sometimes the hardest battles are the ones we fight within our own families, and that protecting your peace is always worth the price. I would love to hear from you. Where are you listening from today? Please leave a comment below and let me know. If you enjoyed this story, please make sure to subscribe to Revenge Stories for more realistic, emotional dramas about justice and resilience. And tell me in the comments, do you think Stella was right to cut Maureen off completely? Or is family always worth saving? I can't wait to read your thoughts. Until next time, stay safe and stand your ground.